Welcome to Reflect with Ed Fassio. Get ready to experience one of the world's first 100% digitally generated podcasts, where we take a step back, dive deep, and strive to learn new things. Join us as we unpack thought-provoking ideas, personal reflections, and inspiring stories to help you stay in the know. Reflect is brought to you by the minds at ByteBrain and powered by emerging technologies from Google, HeyGen, OpenAI, and 11 Labs. Thanks for tuning in. Now, relax and prepare to reflect.
Welcome to Reflect, one of the world's first 100% AI-generated podcasts. Man, today we're going to tackle a question that I think keeps a lot of us up at night.
Oh, yeah. And what's that?
How do you hold on to your integrity, when you got all this corporate pressure? It's this constant battle between what we believe and what our jobs demand.
Yeah, it's a real tightrope walk.
It is.
And we've got some pretty messed up real-world cases to unpack today. And even some philosophy, just for fun.
I love it. Let's do it.
All right, so buckle up. This deep dive is all about helping you navigate this crazy world without losing your soul.
Without selling your soul. All right, so let's get into it. Most companies, they love to talk about all this ethics stuff.
Right.
But let's be honest, at the end of the day, profit wins.
Right. Yeah, it's not even just that it wins. It's almost like it's built into the DNA of these corporations. Study after study shows that these short-term gains, they just overshadow everything else.
Right.
Even when it comes at the cost of their employees' well-being.
So they're basically setting us up to fail ethically.
Yeah. I mean, it's a recipe for a moral crisis, that's for sure. You're told to hit those numbers no matter what it takes. And it's like, look the other way, bend the rules a little bit, just to get it done.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And then what happens when that bumps up against, your own sense of right and wrong?
Yeah. You're in a tough spot.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's not just like CEOs and stuff dealing with this. I mean, imagine like just a regular salesperson who's got to hit their quota every month.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Sales is, talk about a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
That can lead to, some seriously shady stuff,
Oh, yeah.
Exaggerating the, benefits of the product or downplaying the risks, maybe even using some tactics that you wouldn't normally, be okay with.
Yeah, that you find repulsive. And that's where I feel like the rot sets in. Those small compromises, they just kind of chip away at your integrity.
Yeah, it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. And the scary thing is it's often just built into the whole company culture.
That ends justify the means thing.
Yeah, exactly. Success, it's all about the metrics, Profit margins, deals closed, stock prices. And in that kind of environment, the person who dares to raise an ethical concern, they're seen as a roadblock.
Yeah, not a team player.
Yelled it. And that's when things can get really dangerous for those trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Our sources, they're just full of these chilling stories of whistleblowers who paid a really heavy price.
Yeah, this is where it gets really, really heartbreaking. Like we've got this case of a Wells Fargo branch manager. He got fired and blacklisted just for reporting fraud.
Yeah.
Talk about shooting the messenger.
Yeah.
And it's not like an isolated incident. We've got UBS Securities, GlaxoSmithKline, Boeing, Citigroup. It's like a pattern.
It is a pattern.
It's systemic. It's this silencing of anyone who disagrees. And it really shows like the brutality of trying to stand by your principles when the whole system's designed to just crush you.
Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder, can you even win in this corporate game without selling your soul? Like, is integrity a luxury that only a few people can afford?
That's a tough one.
It is.
You've got the cynics out there who are like, business is a blood sport, nice guys finish last, all that.
Right. And there's some truth to that, I think, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But then you've got companies like Patagonia, for example.
Yeah.
They're built entirely on ethical practices.
Yeah, and they're killing it.
They are.
So maybe it's not impossible. But how do we make that the rule and not the exception?
Right.
How do we build spaces where integrity is actually rewarded, not punished?
It's a huge challenge, for sure. This is going to sound a little out there, but it makes me think about the story of Jesus Christ.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more.
Okay, so think about it. Jesus was constantly challenging the powers that be, right?
Yeah.
He was speaking truth no matter the risk, even when it got him in trouble.
And ultimately, he paid the ultimate price.
Exactly. And I know that's an extreme example.
Yeah.
But it shows us, like, the potential cost of sticking to your guns, Sometimes doing the right thing puts a target on your back.
It's a really powerful analogy. So are we saying that everybody needs to be a martyr for their beliefs in the workplace?
No, not necessarily,
Okay.
but it does show that you need courage and conviction. Like Jesus, he never wavered.
Right.
And it's not just about individuals being perfect. The system needs to change too, right? It's not enough if the whole game is rigged against you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've got to shift the culture, figure out what success even means anymore, and hold these corporations accountable for what they do.
100%.
Okay, so let's get practical here. What are some things that people can actually do to navigate this ethical minefield?
Well, first of all, I think we have to ditch this traditional idea of what success even is.
Okay.
It's not just about climbing the ladder and getting that big paycheck. It's about finding work that actually resonates with your values, even if it means doing something different.
Like entrepreneurship.
Exactly. Or maybe working for a smaller company where you have more control.
Right.
And then there's this whole thing about transparency and accountability.
Calling out the BS when you see it.
Yes. Supporting those who are brave enough to speak up, demanding transparency from the people in charge, and holding companies responsible when they mess up ethically.
And I would add, before you even sign that contract, do your research.
Oh, for sure.
Make sure the company actually lives up to its promises. It's not just all talk.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to ask those tough questions in the interview.
Yeah.
And if something feels off, trust your gut.
Yeah.
Even if it's a big paycheck, if the opportunity feels rotten, walk away.
Walk away. Solid advice. Now, what about those who are already stuck? What about those folks who are already in a toxic environment? What's the play for them?
Man, that's a rough spot to be in.
Yeah.
There's no easy answer. But just recognizing that you're not alone, that's a good first step.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people are dealing with the same struggles.
Yeah. And there are resources out there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There are organizations that help whistleblowers, legal help for those who've been retaliated against, even therapists who specialize in workplace trauma.
And sometimes the best thing to do is just leave.
Yeah, sometimes you got to just get out.
Get out. You know, it might mean a pay cut starting over.
Yeah.
But your mental health, your integrity,
Right.
that's worth more than any job. Speaking of really tough situations, there's this tragic case that we need to talk about. Sushir Balaji, this OpenAI researcher, he died under some really, really suspicious circumstances.
Yeah, this one hits close to home, you know,
It does.
given our work here at Reflect.
Sushir was brilliant, like a rising star in the AI world.
He was.
He worked at OpenAI, the folks who made ChatGPT, for 4 years.
Wow.
But he started getting more and more disillusioned with what he saw as unethical stuff happening there.
What kind of stuff?
Well, specifically, he said that OpenAI was like playing fast and loose with copyright law, using protected material to train ChatGPT.
Oh, wow.
So he went public. He blew the whistle on what he believed was illegal activity.
Brave guy.
And then, just a few months later, he's found dead in his apartment in San Francisco.
Oh, no.
Officially, it was ruled a suicide, but the timing, everything about it, it raises red flags.
Yeah, you can't ignore that it happened right after he went public. Like, what kind of pressure was he under?
Right. What kind of retaliation was he facing?
It's a dark side of whistleblowing, you know? These people take such huge risks.
They do.
And it's a reminder that speaking truth to power can have a really, really steep price.
And it screams for us to do better to protect these people.
Yeah.
They need a system where they can come forward without being afraid for their lives.
Absolutely. They need to feel safe.
Because in the end, it's the truth that sets us free.
Right. Could agree more. Without truth, there is no justice.
Yeah. This has been a heavy conversation, but a really important one. So as we kind of wrap up this first part, what are the key things you want our listeners to take away?
I think the big one is that this battle between your own integrity and that pressure from your job, it's real, it's everywhere, and it's tough.
Yeah.
Tons of people are dealing with it, and there isn't one easy answer.
Right. But finding work that lines up with your values, it's possible.
Absolutely. It might take some work, some creativity, maybe even a little leap of faith, but those opportunities are out there.
And we can't forget about the need to actually change the system.
Right. We need to change how we define success, make ethics a priority, and hold these corporations accountable for what they do.
That's the big game right there. And this is where it gets really interesting for me. What about you, listeners? What are your thoughts? How have you navigated these sticky situations in your own careers? What advice do you have for others who are facing these same struggles? Share your stories, your insights, your wisdom with us.
Yeah, we're all in this together. And by sharing our experiences, by working together, maybe, just maybe, we can build a world where integrity isn't just some nice idea,
Yeah.
but it's the driving force behind everything we do.
Let's build a future where integrity actually matters.
Where it's not just tolerated, but it's celebrated. Where it's not a weakness, but a superpower.
Well said. That wraps up part 1 of our deep dive on integrity under pressure.
We'll be back soon for part 2, where we'll dig into even more real-world examples and some practical strategies for staying true to yourself in a world that often demands compromise.
Looking forward to it.
If you're looking to get in front of a global audience in a fresh, innovative way, Reflect is where it's at. With its AI-driven format, it's pushing boundaries in podcasting. Definitely something worth exploring if you're looking to collaborate and do something different. Reach out and see what you guys can do together.
Welcome back to Reflect. We spent part 1, kind of exploring that push and pull between holding on to your integrity and navigating the often, let's face it, kind of ethically murky waters of the corporate world.
Absolutely.
We got into those philosophical questions, the real consequences whistleblowers face.
Right.
And even, touched on the story of Jesus and how he embodied that uncompromising integrity.
That was really powerful.
It is a powerful story.
So now in part 2, we're going to get even more practical.
Right. Let's do it.
We're going to give you, the listener, some tools, not just to survive, but to actually thrive.
Right. 5
ethically in your professional life.
Love it. Let's get tactical.
So what are some of those pressure points where our integrity really gets put to the test at work?
I think one of the most common ones is that pressure to conform, to fit into that company culture, even when it clashes with your own personal values.
It does.
We talked about that go along to get along mentality.
Yeah, it's like this invisible force field pushing you to prioritize the team's idea of success.
Right.
Even if it means like cutting corners or looking the other way.
Yeah, and it creates these really tough dilemmas.
It does.
Imagine you're in a meeting, right?
Right.
And your boss is pushing this marketing campaign.
Yeah.
That's misleading, maybe even dishonest.
Ooh, yeah.
What do you do in that situation?
That's a classic ethical trap.
It is.
And that's where having a strong moral compass really matters. Before you even walk into that meeting, you need to know what are your non-negotiables.
Right. What are your red lines?
Yeah.
What are you absolutely not willing to compromise on?
And be ready to speak up.
Yes.
Even if it feels like you're swimming upstream.
Yeah, it can feel really lonely.
It can.
But how do you do that? How do you speak up?
Right.
Without sounding like, a self-righteous jerk.
Yeah.
Or risking your job.
Right.
Well, I think one approach is to start by asking clarifying questions. Okay.
Like, hey, I'm a little concerned about the accuracy of this claim. Do we have the data to back it up? Or, how does this align with our company's commitment to transparency and honesty? Sometimes just framing it in terms of the company's own stated values can make people pause and think twice.
It's like holding up a mirror.
It is.
Forcing them to see that disconnect between what they're doing and what they say they believe.
Yeah, and if that doesn't work, you might have to be a little more direct. I'm not comfortable with this approach. I think it could damage our reputation and erode customer trust.
Right.
Something like that.
And I can already hear some of our listeners thinking, easy for you to say, what if speaking up gets me fired?
Oh, it's a legitimate fear.
It is.
And sadly, there are times when doing the right thing can backfire.
Yeah.
That's why documentation is so important.
It is. Keep detailed records of any concerns you have, any communication, any instance where you felt pressured to do something that wasn't right.
Right.
It's like an insurance policy.
It is.
If you ever need to file a complaint or take legal action, that documentation is gold.
It is.
But ideally, it doesn't come to that.
Right.
Sometimes there are ways to navigate these situations without having to, blow the whistle or risk your job.
So what are some other options?
One thing you can try is to find allies within the company.
Okay. Yeah.
Are there other people who share your concerns? Maybe you can build a coalition and push for change from the inside.
There's power in numbers.
There is.
Right. A unified front is harder to ignore.
Exactly. If you can present a shared concern, it carries a lot more weight.
But what if you're the only one?
Yeah.
What if everyone else is like total on board with the questionable stuff.
That's a tough spot.
It is.
That's when you have to ask yourself some hard questions.
Like with what?
Can you live with yourself if you stay silent?
Mm-hmm.
Is this a company that you truly believe in?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, maybe the most ethical choice is to walk away.
To walk away.
It's not always easy, especially if you need the paycheck.
Yeah.
But sometimes leaving a toxic environment is the best thing you can do for your own well-being and for your integrity.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to get out of there.
You do.
So we've talked about those situations where you might feel pressure to compromise.
Right.
What about those times when you witness something really, really bad? Like outright fraud,
Yeah.
illegal activity, something like that.
That's when the decision to blow the whistle
Yeah.
really comes into play. And that's not a decision to take lightly.
It's not.
It's a big deal.
Whistleblowing, it sounds really heroic, but the truth is it can be incredibly isolating
It can.
and even dangerous.
It can.
These are people who are putting their careers, their reputations, even their safety on the line.
Yeah, you're going up against some really powerful forces.
You are.
And sadly, the system is often designed to protect those in power, not those who speak out against them.
Yeah, we saw that in those cases we talked about earlier.
Right.
Wells Fargo, UBS Securities, GlaxoSmithKline, Boeing, Citigroup. These whistleblowers paid a huge price for doing what they believed was right.
They did.
Their stories are a stark reminder of what can happen when you challenge the status quo.
It's true. It's scary.
It is.
But also inspiring. They refused to be silenced. They knew what they were seeing was wrong, and they were willing to risk everything to expose it.
So if someone's out there, they're listening to this, and they're thinking about blowing the whistle, what advice would you give them?
First and foremost, document everything.
Okay.
Meticulously. Gather as much evidence as you can.
Yeah.
Don't leave anything to chance.
Right.
And get legal counsel. Talk to a lawyer who specializes in whistleblower cases.
Right.
They can guide you through the process and help protect you from retaliation.
And don't go it alone. Right.
No, definitely not.
There are organizations out there, like the Government Accountability Project or the National Whistleblower Center.
Those are great resources.
They can provide support resources, connect you with other people who've been through this.
It's a community,
It is.
You're not alone in this.
Because it's going to be a tough road.
It will be.
But you're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for what's right.
That's right.
You're fighting for a better world.
You are. It takes a lot of courage.
It does.
To stand up like that.
It does.
So yeah, I applaud anyone who's considering doing that.
All right, that wraps up part 2 of our deep dive on integrity under pressure.
In part 3, we're gonna shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
And talk about how we can collectively create a more ethical and just workplace. We'll look at, the role of leadership.
Right.
Corporate culture.
Yeah.
And how we can create systemic change to foster an environment where integrity is not just valued, but rewarded.
It's time to make a real impact with your brand. Reflect offers a groundbreaking way to reach a global audience through custom storytelling. Research shows that people are 55% more likely to remember your brand when they connect emotionally. And there's no better way to create that connection than with a story. Forget cookie-cutter ads. With Reflect, you get a powerful AI-driven narrative that showcases your brand's journey in a way audiences won't forget. Ready to change the game? Head to reflectpodcast.com to book a free consultation. They're telling the future. Are you in it?
All right, welcome back to Reflect. In parts 1 and 2, we really dug into that tension, that struggle between personal integrity and that corporate pressure.
Absolutely. And we heard some powerful stories
We did.
From whistleblowers who faced some serious retaliation for speaking truth to power.
Yeah.
And we talked about some strategies, for navigating those ethical dilemmas that we all face in the workplace.
So now, in this final part, we're going to zoom out a little bit.
Yeah.
We're going to look at the bigger picture.
Right. The systemic stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How do we create a world where integrity isn't just some empty slogan?
Right.
It's actually the driving force.
The engine.
The engine driving our businesses and institutions.
Because let's be real, telling individuals to be ethical, that's not enough.
It's not.
The system itself needs a serious upgrade.
It does. It does.
We need a culture where integrity is celebrated, not punished,
Right.
where speaking truth to power
Yeah.
is seen as an act of courage,
Yeah.
not a career killer.
So where do we even begin? This is a massive undertaking.
It is. It is.
Where do we start?
Well, I think it all starts at the top with leadership.
Mm.
They set the tone, for
Oh,
the
man.
whole organization.
Right.
If their priority is profit over principles, well, that message trickles down, it affects everything.
It's like that old saying, a fish rots from the head down.
Exactly. We need leaders who not only embody integrity themselves, but they actively cultivate it throughout the entire organization.
Okay, but what does that actually look like? I mean, in the real world, not just like corporate buzzwords.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think transparency is key.
Okay.
Leaders need to be upfront with their employees about the company's values, its goals,
Right.
And yeah, even its struggles.
And be willing to admit when they've messed up.
Oh, 100%.
Right.
Nobody's perfect.
No.
And when leaders are willing to own their mistakes,
Yeah.
it builds that culture of accountability.
It does.
It shows that it's okay to mess up,
Yeah.
as long as you learn from it.
And that gives others permission to do the same.
Exactly. It creates what we call psychological safety,
Okay.
where people feel comfortable speaking up, sharing their concerns,
Right.
brainstorming solutions, without fear of punishment.
Because ultimately that's what we want,
Yeah.
right? A workplace where people feel empowered to do the right thing, even when it's tough.
Absolutely. And that takes more than just words. It takes action.
Okay, so what kind of action are we talking about? Give us some specifics.
Okay, well, for starters, companies need to, put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah.
Invest in ethics training,
Yeah.
compliance programs, robust whistleblower protections.
Yeah.
Make sure it's not just like for show.
Yeah, window dressing.
Exactly. And when those standards are violated, there need to be real consequences.
They're due.
It doesn't matter how high up that person is.
Right.
Because if there are no consequences, then the message is loud and clear,
What's the message?
integrity is optional. It's all just a PR stunt.
We need a system where integrity isn't just valued.
Yeah.
It's actually incentivized.
Yes. And that brings us to a really interesting point.
Okay, what's that?
I think we need to rethink how we measure success.
Okay.
You mentioned this earlier.
Yeah.
But it's worth repeating,
It is.
We can't just obsess over the bottom line.
Yeah.
The wider impact of our actions. That matters too.
It does. It does.
The impact on our employees, on our customers, on the environment, on society as a whole.
Right.
All of that needs to be factored in.
True success is more than just profits.
It is.
It's about making a positive contribution to the world.
And that's something that resonates with a lot of people, especially, younger generations.
Yeah, they're not just looking for a paycheck. They want to do something meaningful.
Exactly. They want to work for a company they can be proud of.
They do.
And they're willing to walk away from companies that don't align with their values, which means that companies that want to attract
Right.
and retain top talent, they need to get serious about ethics.
It's not just good PR anymore.
No.
It's a business imperative.
It is. So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I think it's important to leave our listeners with a call to action.
Love it.
What can they do, to champion integrity, not just in their workplaces, but in the world?
Yeah.
Well, I think it starts with living your values
Okay.
every single day. Being honest, being fair, being kind, being courageous,
Yeah.
showing up as the kind of person you want to see in the world.
Setting a good example.
Exactly. And speaking up when you see something wrong,
Right.
whether it's a coworker cutting corners
Yeah.
or a company misleading its customers or a politician abusing their power.
Yeah, because silence is complicity.
It is.
If you see something, say something.
Even if your voice shakes,
Yeah.
even if you're scared, speaking up is always better than staying silent.
And we need to support each other, right?
Yes.
When someone does have the courage to blow the whistle, we need to have their back.
We do.
Because whistleblowers, they're like canaries in the coal mine. You know?
They are.
They're alerting us to danger.
Yeah.
And silencing them puts us all at risk.
It does. It does. So let's work together to create a world where integrity isn't just a virtue.
Yeah.
It's the norm.
It's expected.
Yes.
It's celebrated.
Absolutely.
Where it's not a liability.
No.
It's a strength.
It's good for the soul.
It is.
And it's good for business.
I love that. That's a future I want to be a part of.
Me too. And I think together we can make it happen.
Thanks for listening to the Reflect podcast. where we're telling the future. Are you in it? Visit reflectpodcast.com and share your story.
In the cyber ocean of online voices and recycled content, something different has arrived. Reflect isn't just another podcast, it's the future of storytelling, powered entirely by AI. From curating data to assembling thought-provoking ideas, we've redefined how journeys are told. Reflect is a podcast that thinks, learns, and evolves with each episode. Every tale, every insight, crafted by the most advanced AI technologies. A podcast that disrupts the industry, breaking free from traditional formats, taking you on an entirely new experience. So tune in now and reflect. We're telling the future.